Welcome to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Wahid Tanner and I am building this 20-foot catamaran sailboat in my garage. And in this episode I'm going to show you some of the sanding and shaping of the hulls, which are sitting here upside down right now. And I am just finishing the outside in preparation for fiberglass. So follow along and I'll show you all the steps involved. It is finally time to flip the hulls upside down. So the first thing I did was use the jack to remove the furniture dollies from underneath the hull, one of the hulls, slid both of the hulls all the way over to one side, and cleaned up some room here to be able to lay this first hull on its side. So that we'll lay it on the side and then flip it up upside down. And just like that, both hulls are now upside down. And here's another look at the hulls that are upside down from this corner of the garage. I'm doing this at nighttime so I don't have to worry about the sun and the UV rays hitting the exposed epoxy. I'll get that front ends covered up with the tarps here soon. Now that the hulls are upside down and uncovered, I can look down the lines and see some curves that I want to try to remove. It's a little hard to see this on the camera, but I do have a little red square that is marking an indentation in the side. If I move the camera slightly this way, you might be able to make out a bit of a indentation there. It's something that if I get close to it, then you won't be able to see it, and if I get far away from it, then the camera's not really picking it up. So I'll need to sand those things out. And in addition to that, there's some other places. For instance, along here where there's quite a bit of a protrusion here from the planking, so that can be sanded down flat level with this. And then I'll have various places that I need to fill in, such as like a little knot hole here that needs to be filled in with some thickened epoxy, and a lot of filling along the side here where this gap is on the planking here as well. So for this, I'll sand this out first and then fill that in. I'm worried if I try to just put thickened epoxy in there right now, there are many places it might actually stick because there is some bare wood in here, but there are other places where it's just not going to stick to this epoxy that's not roughed up any in there. So yeah, I'll need to kind of rough that groove out some and then fill that in with thickened epoxy. Now I've already, when the hulls were laying down, sanded this fairly smooth, but there are some places here as well that I can fill in some little gaps like this. So just some little imperfections that I'm going to go along. Like here's a little dent in the wood right here. Things like that that I need to fill in preparation for putting fiberglass on this. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of sanding. This is the type of sanding that I needed to do with the detail sander to get in here and widen this gap and sand down inside here a bit to make sure that there's something for the thickened epoxy to grip onto. And likewise, for instance, over here I had to take, so there's a definite dip here where I had to sand that down to open up that gap a little bit. So now I will be filling in all of these gaps along the seams. Most of the little cracks and holes have been filled in with thickened epoxy all along the side and top of both hulls. And I'll show you here the side. So this is the thickened epoxy that is filling that gap that was there. And now it's flat and smooth. And here at the top, there were a few places where the side was a bit lower than the bottom. So by scraping straight across here, I filled in that low spot. And there were a few places where it was gapping, like here, along here it was gapping a bit. But most of it just went to filling little low spots. Like right in here, where the two planks were joined together, there's a little bit of a low spot. And other than that, there were some places where there were some cracks in between the planking, like along here. That all had to be filled in. There were a few knot holes also that got filled in, like here. So the next step here is to get this sanded, and then once it's sanded, go over everything and look for any more imperfections. Now what I did on both hulls was I did the bottoms and this curved side. The flat side was previously in pretty good shape. And it only has planking down to about here, and the rest of the way down is plywood. So there's not going to be that many imperfections in the plywood. But when I get this sanded, I'll split these hulls apart a bit and make sure to check these flat sides as well. And I'll probably just circle any imperfections with a marker as I find them, and then go back over with another coat of thickened epoxy, a much less thickened epoxy for this next time because there's many fewer imperfections to fill. This was the majority of them. So once I get everything filled, then will come the step of rounding over these edges. And after that, it will probably be waiting on some cooler temperatures before starting any fiberglassing. But I'm not going to end the video here. I'm going to keep going. I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of what's happening and what still I can do here, even in these hot temperatures. Most of this just thickened epoxy work I can do even in warmer temperatures. So, alright, the next step is to get to some sanding. I finished the initial round of sanding. There are still a few shiny spots that you can see here, the reflection of the light. So I'll use that light to help determine when the sanding is complete. So yeah, so it'll help to find any spots that still need to be touched up, that are still too smooth. But now that the sanding is, at least one pass is done, I think I'm going to round over the edges using the router. I'll be using this handheld trim router, and I have a 3/8 inch round over bit on it, and because of the 90-degree angle here, I will be able to use the trim router to trim along this side, but because this side is at an angle, you can see that if I put this on here and bring it all the way over to where the bearing hits, it doesn't actually make any contact with the cutting surface or with the blades. So this side, at least here where the angle is a much larger angle, I'll have to round this over with just a hand sander, maybe a power sander. But as we get closer to the bow, up here the angle starts approaching a 90-degree again. So some up here I'll be able to use the router, but probably once it starts to get about here, I'll have to switch over to rounding that over manually. Well, I've been doing a lot of sanding, and the main thing that I accomplished was rounding over this edge that the roundover bed on the router could not get, because this is not a 90-degree angle. And I did that by taking the electric hand planer at about a 45-degree angle and making a flat surface. And then I took this 6-inch random orbiter sander and rounded that edges over once I had a flat surface there. And then I took the random orbiter sander and sanded everything down. And I wanted to show you here, you can actually see the difference between this has been sanded with the random orbiter sander, and this has been sanded with the random orbiter sander, and then I went over it with just sandpaper by hand. And you can actually see the difference here. And I wanted to show you this over here. So let me put the camera here. I've got a spot here that I've not yet sanded, and you can see the difference there. And I'm just using a piece of regular sandpaper. So let me position this and see if you can see this. There we go. Let's get a little bit closer. So the spot we're going to be sanding is right here, and I just run this over like this. Here, let me hold this up a bit. So I just run the sandpaper over and press my fingers on it. I've tried using a sanding block, and I just don't get as good of results as when I just hold it with my fingers. So let me sand this. It gets a little hot, so I got to keep moving my fingers. That is something that the epoxy will stick to now, where before I think it would have had a hard time sticking to that. So even though if you're sanding with an electrical sander, with an electric sander, it's always good to look for these shiny spots and go back over it with just some regular sandpaper. So, alright, so there's still more sanding to be done, but I think that's enough for this episode. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at this and get this posted so that you can see the progress. Bye!